So, I watched 20 Days in Mariupol to make this video, and today I will tell you why, in my opinion, this movie is manipulative. For those who don't know about my channel, I survived the battle for Mariupol, and I was there much longer than just 20 days, leaving only on the 22nd of April. And I can say that in the 20 days of Mariupol movie, there are almost no lies, with the exception of the false fact that the Russians blocked civilians from leaving the city. But more on that later. However, this film is manipulative and shows only one side of the reality. The main thing I want to say today is that if someone plays with your emotions, it means he either wants to deceive you or has already deceived you. This phrase can fully describe this movie. Also, before this video, I want to say that many pro-Russian people consider this film a fake because it uses footage of Gorlovka from 2015. And since there are only a few of these shots, and the rest of the film consists of real footage, which was recorded not far from my location, I will not focus on this. Also in this video I will say a few words about the Russian documentary At the Edge of the Abyss, and explain why it's much closer to reality. I will also tell you many facts that the authors of 20 Days in Mariupol simply ignored. I want to remind you that my channel is only being sponsored by you, and I am really grateful to people who are helping me. If you want to support me, link is in the description. Now let's start. Most of the movie consists of shocking footage and it's real. So what's wrong with that? In my opinion, this was done to push a narrative that is beneficial to Ukraine. In the film from the very beginning, even in the shots before March the 2nd, before hell began, they show a huge number of panicking people and a crying child is shown as a close-up. Although this was undoubtedly the case, there were not many such people. Everyone reacted differently, some were calm, some even managed to make jokes. The main goal of this film is to cause shock, to turn off the critical thinking of the viewers, and to make them believe in propaganda. And this film is full of propaganda. The director deliberately filmed people who hate Russia and blame it for what is happening. There were such people in Mariupol, but they were very few. I would estimate less than 10%. As for the people who also hated Ukraine and blamed it for everything, there were no fewer of them. But firstly, the director wouldn't show them, and secondly, the footage was filmed when the Ukrainian army still controlled that part of the city. So if such people had expressed their opinion on camera, they wouldn't have lived long. So despite the fact that this movie is not a lie, it only shows half of the reality, which is a manipulation. However, the director at least showed one scene with civilians who says that Ukraine is shelling them, and a man who says that everyone is to blame. But at the same time, there are 5 to 10 people in this movie who blame Russia. From my own experience, I can say that there were 10 times more people like that guy who blames everyone than people who don't want to live in Russia at any cost. And I repeat again, this manipulation comes with a huge amount of shocking footage that simply makes the viewer believe them without thinking. Therefore, it's closer to propaganda than to documentary. By the way, if the director had shown reality, he would have shown that all people without exception hated the city administration and the mayor, who simply left us to die. The mayor was equally hated by both pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian citizens. But of course, there is not a word about this in the film. If anyone is interested, I made a video about how the mayor ran away to Zaporozhye on the first day of war, and from there reassured Mariupol residents that everything will be fine and there is no need to leave the city. A significant part of citizens hated Zelensky, but if Arthur had shown this, the West probably wouldn't have given him an Oscar. And in general, most of residents wanted this to end at any way, and it didn't matter who would control the city, as long as people wouldn't die. Personally, I, like many others, wanted the Ukrainians to just surrender and for this horror to end. I remember my emotions when one of my neighbors said that he heard Zelensky's speech on radio, where he said that Mariupol will hold. Zelensky had electricity and water in Kiev. I think if he had cooked food on fire with us under shelling, he would have spoken differently. Therefore, the director's words that he wants this to end as soon as possible are simply hypocrisy. If the Ukrainian army had laid down its arms, Mariupol wouldn't have suffered, just as Berdyansk and Melitopol didn't suffer. Of course, the film doesn't say a word about human shield tactics. Although literally 2 steps away from the filming locations, Ukrainian mortars and tanks fired from behind houses in which there were civilians. And positioning military in a hospital next to civilians is also a war crime. The movie also says that the Russians blocked the exit from the city for civilians, although this is not true. This was done by the Ukrainian army from the first days of the war. Russia, however, didn't prevent anyone from leaving the city. This is the only overt lie in the film. Now I will move on to facts that were ignored by the creator of the film. The film doesn't say a word about the Ukrainian army shelling residential areas just like the Russians. They had tanks, mortars, artillery, and I remember how in mid-April, when my area had long been under the control of Russian forces, it continued to be occasionally hit from the direction of Azovstal and Ilyicha steel plants. The director shows few frames where civilians are saying that Ukraine is bombing them, but it's less than 10 seconds. And the rest of the movie, he just repeats same words about Russian bombings. Now probably the most interesting fact for many. If you watch this movie, you may remember this woman in labor. This is Mariana Vyshemirskaya, and when she left Mariupol, she didn't like the movie at all. She said how it was in reality, that the AFU soldiers simply used them as cover, setting up a position in the hospital. Moreover, they covered their positions with sandbags and didn't take care about the civilians. This is a violation of the Geneva Convention. By the way, according to her, she told this to the Associated Press journalists, but they simply cut it out. She also said that when the Russian military came, they immediately took care of her, shared food and water. The Ukrainians, after she told everyone how it really was, placed her on Mirotvorets. Now she lives in Moscow. A significant part of the film takes place in hospital too. By the way, this is how it looks now. It was the first place in my area that Russia took control of, and the first thing I heard about the Russians is that they are sharing food, water, especially boiled water, and providing first aid to civilians in this hospital. Another important fact about this film is that the events in it take place only up until March 15th. Russia began giving humanitarian aid around March 20th, removing garbage, demining the city, bringing in construction equipment and clearing rubble in mid-April, and the first school opened at the same time. And Russia started to deliver water and to all houses where there were many people. And while I can't blame the director for leaving this hell before it was over, it makes the film extremely incomplete. Now I will say a few words about the Russian documentary about Mariupol At the Edge of the Abyss. This film is mostly about soldiers from Donetsk and nearby cities, but it also shows a lot of civilians in Mariupol. The similarity between these films is that both directors have been involved in the conflict since 2014. Both were in Mariupol, Gorlovka and Donetsk. And by the way, I recently posted an interview with a resident of Mariupol, who was a soldier in the DPR militia in 2014, and you can watch it if you are interested. So, At the Edge of the Abyss is much more objective than 20 Days in Mariupol, because the civilians in it are mostly just people who want this hell to end. And they don't hate Russia. Many of them don't like both sides. The people in this movie sound like my neighbors when we used to cook on fire together. There is no cherry picking like in 20 Days of Mariupol, where director showed only pro-Ukrainian fanatics. And although some consider At the Edge of the Abyss a propaganda, for me it's an objective reality. The link to this film with English subtitles is in my Telegram. The subtitles are made by Neural Network, but there is no better version yet. I highly recommend you to watch it. That was all for today. Don't let anyone fool you. Thanks for watching.